we've had a huge emergency that I wanted to alert you to. No, we didn't. We did, however, have an interesting event that I did want to alert you to. I recorded 3 Tough Talks interviews in a 2-day span last week, and I wasn't aware until my team alerted me to the fact that my microphone was bad. The old mic that I was using was starting to die. So the audio, my audio, not the guests sound great. I don't. It's a little scratchy at times, especially like the louder I get, the scratchier it is. So the decision was, do we trash these for the sake of, commitment to quality, which of course we are truly committed to, or not? And I've chosen the latter, and I'll tell you why. Because when I interview Tough Talks guests, even if they're repeat guests like David Wood, this was his 3rd Tough Talks interview, I tell them, we have a little conversation, a very, very brief conversation before, like a couple days before we do the interview. I don't want to talk to them a whole lot, just a tiny little bit to hear what might the conversation topic be, and then that's enough. I go do my research. I want it to be truly organic, like infinitely, or as unrehearsed as possible. And it's for that reason, because we can't recreate that kind of organic spontaneity, right? And so it's for that reason that I decided to keep these and to publish them. I mean, our guests are amazing, If you're seeing this video, this is at the beginning of either David Wood's 3rd Tough Talks appearance. He's the first person to ever do that. Dr. Amy Killen or Brian Bogert, right? So I'm going to leave this video and the little script commentary about this on those 3 episodes. But now here's the cool part. You get to multitask. And I am not kidding. This is actually really cool. Because look, this is one of my mantras, right? The problem is the gift, and ain't bad, just is. You get to do some training. The multitask is, A, you get to pick up the wisdom bombs that these badasses are dropping, right? You get to learn from my amazing guests, who I'm so proud to be able to share with you. That's one. And at the same time, you also get to do some true, like legit mental toughness training, because here's what's likely to happen. As you're listening to this, whether this is on the strict podcast audio version, or if you're watching the video, the audio is going to be the same, and you're very likely to have the following experience, which would be something like, oh my God, this sounds horrible. I did it. There's a training up. Let's get some work in right there. Let's get in a couple reps, right? So repeat the mantras, use the mantras. So catch yourself when you're complaining about the crappy quality of my audio. And if you go something like, oh God, it sounds so annoying, which you might say anyway, even if I had perfect audio. And that too is an opportunity, right, for you to catch, own, and replace, right? Catch yourself when you're complaining, right, about the bad audio quality. Own it and say, this isn't frustrating because of the audio quality. It's only frustrating because of the way I'm thinking about it. And then upgrade, and you can upgrade however you damn please. That's the work, right? And that's the beauty of mental toughness. But I'm offering some options, right, of mantras, of replacement interpretations, which say, well, ain't bad, just is, just as bad audio quality. Ain't bad, it's just bad audio quality. Or the problem is the gift, right? It's like the problem, the audio, right, scratchiness, can be a gift. If I'll view it masterfully, which is, here I am, getting stronger. I'm actually getting in mental reps. So that's what I invite you to do. The long version of the problem is the gift, by the way, is this. Every set of circumstances can be leveraged for gain if viewed masterfully. Another way of saying it is you can create excellence out of every, without exception, set of circumstances if you interpret it with mastery. So I invite you to have that practice here, all right? Thank you for participating in this, right, training. And thanks for following, and thanks for your support. And enjoy the episodes.
Well, it has to do with the thing I like about sex and sexual optimization, if you will, is that having a healthy sex life touches on really all aspects of health. Like it touches on physical health through blood pressure and cardiovascular risk and sleep and things like that. It touches on, mental, emotional health. For instance, it helps with decreasing depression and anxiety and making you have sort of better self-confidence and helps your relationship. So you have that as well. It helps with spiritual health. Like it basically touches on all kind of 6 main areas of health, including mental health. I think that there's a huge mental component to sexual health. It really is helpful. If you have a good sex life, it makes you feel better about yourself, about your life, about your relationships. And I think that helps get through the day in all different ways.
Most of us never learned how to train our brains, which is why most of us needlessly settle, struggle, and worse, suffer. My name is Chris Doris, and I want to make brain training mainstream. This is my series, Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I'm interviewing badasses from all walks of life on what mental toughness means to them and their unique approaches to strengthening their minds. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I am your host, Chris Doris, and before I get to our guest today, I wanted to take care of our one housekeeping item, which is this. If you're not getting email notifications of these new episodes, which come out every other Thursday, then that means you're also not getting notifications of my new blog posts, which come out every single Tuesday. And you maybe aren't also getting the daily dose messages delivered to your email inbox every morning. The daily dose, by the way, is the daily dose mental toughness tips in 30 seconds or less, right? So you get a cool nugget of mental toughness wisdom sent to your email box every morning around 6 a.m. your time, no matter where you are in the world. So if that's the case, let's address that situation. Let's remedy that, shall we? By going to ChristopherDoris.com/lists, L-I-S-T-S. Christopher Doris, which is D-O-R-R-I-S, /lists, L-I-S-T-S. Email, name, click, problem solved. Now, our guest today is someone that I've met almost 3 years ago at an event in Sardinia, Italy, which is one of the blue zones, 5 blue zones of the planet Earth, which are where people live unusually long lives. The event was on longevity and it was hosted by Mind Valley. It's an event called A-Fest. And Dr. Amy Killen is our guest, and she was invited to be a presenter there, which of course makes sense because she's a specialist in longevity and anti-aging. So I am not going to tell you the whole story because I really do want to save the story. It's fun as hell. I've only mentioned it to her once before ever. And I think it was through writing, because I don't think I've even spoken to her since then. So I want to have fun with that with her, because this is what I'll give you. You're going to notice this instantly is her vibe. She's like so wizardly smart, right? And she has this incredibly inviting, high vibe. You know, this beautiful, fun, playful spirit. And that's one of the things I love about her is that that's the first thing I noticed about her. But I'm not going to give you any more details. I'm not going to be a spoiler of my own damn story. So let me read you her bio, okay? Board certified in emergency medicine with over 10 years of direct patient care, Amy's been practicing anti-aging and regenerative medicine for more than 5 years. She is fellowship trained in anti-aging and regenerative medicine through the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And she's done extensive additional training in aesthetics, platelet-rich plasma and stem cells, hair restoration, bioidentical hormones, nutrition, fitness, and sexual health. She is the medical director of BioRestoration Medical, a busy clinic with a comprehensive, integrative approach to health located in Draper, Utah. She also works at Doceri Medical in Park City, Utah, with Dr. Harry Adelson, providing cutting-edge regenerative medical treatments for a host of different conditions, which we're going to ask her all about. She has spoken internationally about PRP and stem cells, as well as sexual longevity and skin health, and she also teaches physician training courses outlining current best practices for using regenerative medicine in aesthetics and sexual optimization. She says, I feel lucky every day to get to do what I do and can't wait to share my practice and knowledge with you. Well, let's give her another opportunity to do just that. Dr. Amy Killen, where you at? Let's go find her. And here she is, Dr. Amy B. Killen. How many times have you done podcasts where people play with the name? Because it's just so easy. Amy B. Killen it. I mean,
yeah, I get it a lot. I say it's my rapper name, but then I'm not actually a good rapper, so I feel like I can't really follow that up with anything good. So it's it's my rapper name / just a cool name.
You know, that reminds me, speaking of rappers, how I know you. I met you. I first saw you speak, and it was Sardinia, Italy.
Yeah.
At an A-Fest event with the theme of longevity. So of course you were a perfect presenter. And I didn't know who you were. I was attracted to the title, which I do not recall, of your talk. It was you're so good at coming up with playful titles. And by the way, time out from the story, I'll get back to it because I just want to make sure I mention this. Everybody, please go follow Amy on Instagram. She crushes it on Instagram. And like one of the things that I love so much about following you is that there's two values for me. One is I'm entertained like a mofo. You're funny as hell. And yet and additionally, you bring so much learning, so much great value and education. So yours is easily one of my favorite Instagram accounts. So please go follow her. And I'll repeat this and I'll put it in the show notes, but it's on Instagram. It's Dr. Amy B. Killen, but it's Dr. Dr. Amy, letter B, Killen. So back to Sardinia. So I attend, and it's something about sex. It's something about, sexual optimization. Yeah. So I'm like, well, that sounds fun. And I went and you, this was unplanned. You said something and you didn't plan on saying it. And it was a double entendre, which I don't recall and don't need.
It was about happy endings. I said something about happy endings and I wasn't meaning that like in a sexual way, but it was a talk about sex, of course.
I'd love that you remember that.
Yeah, I do.
You probably remind you of that. That is, and you started laughing harder than anybody in the whole damn room. It's about 400 people. You couldn't even finish your sentences. And I'm like, I love this chick. You're like, you couldn't even get your breath back because you're like laughing with yourself. And that just had everybody, me included, just totally instantly endeared to you. So that was pretty super. So I've been following you ever since. That's between 2 and 3 years ago. So I'm super pumped to finally to get you on the show to serve the Tough Talks tribe. So thanks for making the time because I know you got a lot going on.
Thank you. This will be fun. I remember that very clearly. It was a very funny talk that once I started laughing, then I was totally lost. Like, I don't know how to finish this thing. I'm not sure how to wrap it up. Like, I forgot what I was
that was what was so good about it.
But then I just kind of was like, all right, well, we'll just go with it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I loved so much about that was it was just pure, like you had zero fear. You didn't give a half a shit about the fact that you lost your train of thought. You're just having fun with everybody. And that had everybody go, this isn't even a performance. This is just hanging out with Dr. Amy Killen. So that was super awesome. Yeah, I remember it as well. So I mentioned in the introduction that you're the medical director at BioRestoration Medical, which is all about integrative health. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you also work at the Dossier Medical. I don't know if it's a clinic, Dossier Medical in Park City, Utah. I hear it sucks there. Not.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
You get through. Use mental toughness to get through that. Where you use cutting edge regenerative medicine techniques, namely, I guess there's 4, according to the bit of research that I did on you. Is that you have 4 specialty areas, right? Skin regeneration, hair restoration. You train physicians, but then there's the first one. I've just left it to 4th, which is sexual optimization, which I hope that we are going to be talking about that in the relationship. In fact, why don't we just start with that?
Okay.
What would you say is the relationship between like what does being sexually active and sexually optimized have to do with mental toughness?
Well, it has to do with the thing I like about sex and sexual optimization, if you will, is that having a healthy sex life touches on really all aspects of health. Like it touches on physical health through blood pressure and cardiovascular risk and sleep and things like that. It touches on, mental, emotional health. For instance, it helps with decreasing depression and anxiety and making you have sort of better self-confidence and helps your relationship. So you have that as well. It helps with spiritual health. Like it basically touches on all kind of 6 main areas of health, including mental health. I think that there's a huge mental component to sexual health. It really is helpful. If you have a good sex life, it makes you feel better about yourself, about your life, about your relationships. And I think that helps get through the day in all different ways.
What are those 6 main areas of health?
Physical health, emotional health, mental health, spiritual health, social health, and environmental health.
Wow. Physical, emotional, mental.
Social.
Before there was one I missed. Social, environmental, and one other. Physical, emotional, mental.
What did I just say? Physical.
I know I couldn't write fast enough.
I'll remember in a second. I just said
All right.
now I forgot.
I just curious about that. But this is a podcast on not necessarily mental health, mental toughness, and let me just tell you what that means to me, because first of all, not a lot of people, none of us really have had formal training on strengthening the way that we use our minds, hence the existence of the damn podcast in the first place, right? Which is to help people, to educate people on the fact that, the 2 things. One is that our lives unfold according to the way that we think, right? So the way we use our minds, we can strengthen the way we use our minds, and that makes everything, the creation of excellence in life, a hell of a lot easier. And then B, okay, so what are those things, right? What can I do? So maybe having a great sex life, having a great sex life makes the rest of creating a joy-filled life, a productive life, easier?
Yeah, I think so for sure.
How much of sexual dysfunction is psychological versus physical?
It depends on the person and their age, but certainly both things play in. Obviously, you have to have the mind in the right place. You have to have the interest, the desire, the libido, the attraction, all of that. You have to have your stress levels be low enough to be able to actually kind of think about sex and enjoy it. And that's something that a lot of us have problems with, is our stress is so high that that's all we're focused on. We're kind of in survival mode. The mind is a big piece of it. And then obviously the physical is important as well. The blood flow, the hormones, the structures themselves. So those are the 2 things. It's a combination of those 2 things. And I think it's different for everyone. Some people have more problems in one area. I mean, the mental part for me is the hard part. I can deal with the physical stuff. I can deal with the hormones and the blood flow and the, any kind of structural problems, but it's the mental stuff for my patients that's really difficult for me, because that's not my area of expertise.
Well, this now, as I'm listening to you, I'm having like a chicken and the egg kind of debate inside my head. What's first? So would great sex be a great treatment for anxiety, for example?
Yeah.
But then what if I can't have great sex because I'm anxious?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
It's totally chicken and egg. And also sexual dysfunction. You have someone who's having, they're kind of in their head for whatever reason. They're depressed, they're anxious, they're, stressed out. And then they start to have sexual dysfunction, like erectile dysfunction, or just difficulties, kind of performing, if you will. And that leads to them being more in their head. And then you have this this vicious cycle that definitely happens with sex. And I think that that's a good point.
Well, you started as an ER physician, is that right?
I did. I'm a board certified ER doctor. So I went to residency in emergency medicine, and I worked for about 10 years in very busy ERs in Texas. And then I eventually transitioned over about 8 years ago to doing integrative medicine and regenerative medicine, and kind of did a whole 180.
Integrative or regenerative, right. So why the shift? And then I want to get into what are you so pumped about now?
So the shift happened, it was several years in the making, but towards the end of my ER career, I had 3 kids within 2 years. So I had twins and then one more 20 months later. My husband had moved out of state for a job, and I was essentially sort of a single parent to these very small children. And I had a job that started at 4 a.m. So I wasn't sleeping, and I was stressed, and I was, doing all the things you would imagine. Wasn't super fun to be around. And I did that for a few years. And, and I started, I just essentially got to a point where I was just unhealthy and unhappy. And I realized that nothing was going to change if I didn't make some decisions to change that, in myself. And so I couldn't get rid of my kids. I didn't want to, but I also couldn't. Did some days, but overall,
not that I wanted. I'm just saying that
I couldn't get rid of my kids.
I tried every method imaginable. Didn't work. Couldn't get rid of them.
So I realized that, what I had to do was change my job and get a job that, that made me happier and gave me more flexibility and more freedom and more sleep and all those things. So that's it was a several year process.
A functional transition, really. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's talk about, because it seems to me like when I watch you, and I mean, God, you're so passionate about the work that you do. Like you have these videos. You were giving a woman the other day a treatment, exosomes or something, right? And you're narrating it.
Yeah.
Right? So we get to watch and learn, right? It's like your own TV show, right? And you're just really excited about it. And you can tell you bring people joy, really is one way that like if somebody asks you, I bet you've said that before, like, what do? You say, I just bring people joy. But you could. So let's talk about, what are you most pumped about right now in your current career trajectory?
The thing I love about what I'm doing now is that I can learn about anything I want to, and it's relevant as far as health and wellness, longevity, like all of it's relevant because it all kind of comes together. And then I can kind of dive into those things and adopt them and teach them to other people. So I'm really interested in a lot of the progress that's being made in longevity, as far as the research in longevity, the drugs, the supplements, that kind of stuff. I continue to be very interested in stem cells and the way that we can use them, as well as exosomes and other things like that, for all different things, but especially for sexual health and skin and hair. But honestly, every day is different. I wake up every morning and spend the first hour just learning new things because I'm so excited about what I can share with other people, eventually if I understand it properly.
That's interesting. So I want to slow that down for a second, because that's a lesson within a lesson. So that's part of your morning deal. That's how you start your days, with educating yourself.
Yeah, my first hour, usually I kind of get up around 6 while the rest of the family is asleep.
Yeah.
And I spend about an hour. I try to learn something new, and I try to learn it in a way that I can digest it completely and kind of compress it into something like an Instagram post or a video or something to tell my kids, but something that take a kind of a complicated subject and then to compress it down and share it. And that's the best way that I found to actually teach myself, kind of complicated things.
So give me an example of something that you read about or learned, or they're learning in the last week or so.
So like just yesterday, I did a post about some new drugs that have been looked at for longevity. There's a drug called acarbose that has been compared to some other longevity drugs. And I'd heard about it on a different podcast. And then I spent the morning reading about it and reading about the clinical trials that have gone through and, comparisons to other drugs and why it was different, why it was better or worse. And then I, essentially took all that research over about an hour. And then I compressed that down into, a short little Instagram post, which is not, it's not complete, but I feel like if I can put that in a post and it makes sense and it's coherent and maybe it's a little bit funny here and there, then that means that I've learned it pretty well.
Well, you pull off the maybe a little bit funny quite well.
Thank you.
Like I said, that's part of the entertainment value. It's a beautiful combination of humor and really some really incredible learning. So what are some of the most popular reasons that people come to you for treatment, men and women?
I get a lot of people who come to me for sexual dysfunction of various sorts. Erectile dysfunction is the most common thing for men. Yeah. For women, it's a little more complicated. It can be any kind of sexual dysfunction, whether it's low libido or arousal problems or orgasmic problems or any of that. And I also, I see a lot of hair and skin kind of complaints too, mostly aging related. So I'm not a dermatologist. I'm not a urologist. I'm not, I'm kind of this integrative kind of, I have a lot of bag of tricks, but I don't treat diseases so much as I treat sort of symptoms of aging and try to, regenerate tissue and reverse signs of aging. So it's mostly aging related problems, in the hair, skin, and sex.
So you're basically the integrative fountain of youth.
I like to think of myself like that. I'm not sure it's quite true, but that sounds great.
Yeah. Okay. So do you think that, let's say in Western cultures, well, I don't know, just in the world, do humans age more rapidly than nature would have us?
by virtue of the way that we choose to live?
I think certainly in Western cultures where we're generally more overweight, more diabetic, more metabolically, unfit, that we're definitely aging faster than we could. But at the same time, there are a lot of sort of new innovations that are coming out, hopefully in the next few years, that will start to reverse that a little bit. But yeah, I think that, we all are sitting around more, we're exercising less, like, all of us are guilty of the convenience and taking advantage of the conveniences around us. And I think that that's not helping our longevity game.
You are posting a lot of stuff lately of you being cold. What's going on there?
So, there's this idea that, hot therapy like saunas and things, as well as cold therapy like cryotherapy or being out in the could have different benefits as far as they stress your body in just enough of a way to actually kind of build up this resilience. And there's some longevity benefits that go along with that, as well as immune system benefits. And there's a whole lot of different things depending on what you're talking about. But it's called Hormesis, and it's this idea of
wait, what? Oh, sorry, what's it called?
It's called Hormesis, Hormesis. And it's basically this idea of, of giving yourself kind of a small stress or shock, giving your body a stress or shock. Intermittent fasting is another thing that you can do. It's kind of shocking. It's a little stressful. Your body's not sure about it, but it actually ends up building up this resilience in your body, as well as a mental, toughness actually, and resilience as well. It serves you better later on.
Oh, that's so interesting. I just thought of this. There's a friend of mine. Do you happen to recognize the name Mike Garrick by any chance?
No, I don't think so.
Lives up by you. He's a former client of mine. He does Mind Body Nutrition, is his brand. And lately, he studied Wim Hof big time. Do you know Wim Hof?
I have met him. He wouldn't know me, but I met him at
Jamaica?
at A-Fest in Jamaica. Yeah, we had some drinks together at the bar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, it's good to know that he drinks. That has me feel more normal. But yeah, so Mike has studied him, the breathing. Wim Hof look that guy up. He's becoming so incredibly famous worldwide. His name, for those of you who have not heard of him before, his first name is Wim, W-I-M, and his last name is H-O-F.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool name.
Yeah.
And so he does breathing stuff, but he also does a lot of like ice cold, like freezing water submersion stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mike Garrick, my buddy who I'm referencing, that lives up by you in Utah, he has been doing a lot of plunges, ice cold. Like he's cutting out chunks of ice from a frozen lake and then he's getting ropes. He does it all super healthy, but he's like going underwater. Have you tried that? I mean, I see your pictures. You're out like hiking in basically summer gear.
Yeah. I've done cold plunges too. I hike a lot in Utah, and a lot of times in the high areas where there's snow on the ground.
Yeah.
I'll jump in a lake for a couple of minutes and try to get all the benefits of the freezing cold.
So I'm gonna play super duper devil's advocate here. Okay, that sounds like it just sucks.
Yeah, it totally does.
Oh, okay.
It totally does.
I'm not always doing a very good job of devil's advocacy.
That's actually a big part of why I do it. Like, it's not even so much the health benefits. It's I like the idea of doing something that totally sucks, but getting through it and then feeling like I had it, like I accomplished something almost. Like it's really a mental game for me.
Well, then that's really interesting. So there's two reasons then why you actually do it. So it's a mental game, but you're also referencing physiological benefits.
Right.
Right. Let's talk about both of those for a second. And let's save the mental one for last. Okay.
Okay.
What are some of the physiological benefits of subjecting yourself to freezing cold water?
So there's a couple different things. Cold. There's some immune system benefits. Like I know that Wim Hof, for instance, has studied a lot of things related to that. In fact, he's done some testing with his immune system and his ability to fight off different types of infections because of his breathing exercises in cold, and essentially boosting certain types of immune cells and being able to do that. There's a lot of apparently improvements in things like circulation and lymphatic circulation, as well as just cardiovascular system, blood flow. It's supposed to be helpful for muscle inflammation. So like post-workout, helping you to be able to get rid of that lactic acid in your muscles and be able to get back to working out sooner. Helping with redness, swelling, things like that for sure. There's supposed to be some skin benefits as well. Like people who have autoimmune disorders and things have noted some benefits and decrease in inflammation. So there's all kinds of things, but I just like the way I feel afterwards. Like it really, you do really feel kind of like just amazingly energized and kind of like like a tough girl afterwards, or guy.
That is cool. I can relate a little bit to that, because there was a period we're approaching almost exactly 3 years ago, where I accepted a challenge from someone to lose a bunch of weight fast, which is not super healthy, but I did it in a pretty healthy way with the guidance of nutritionists and trainers and all that stuff. It was for fundraising. And part of the system, part of the process it was this time of year. So even here in Arizona, pools are still cold as hell. Okay, so it gets down into the 40s, and that's cold as shit to me.
Yeah.
Cold as I need. But I was doing like morning pool plunges, right? And the psychology I hate cold water.
Yep, me too.
I am a total cold water mega wuss. At the Jersey Shore, where I spent my summers, I wouldn't go swimming in the damn ocean until like July, August.
Yep.
So it's not 70 degrees. I'm like, I don't need it. So it took enormous amounts of self-talk to be able to do. It took every single time, every single morning. So how often do you do any of this cold treatment?
I don't do it every day. I don't have a like cold plunge tub in my backyard like some people do. Yeah. It's really more about like when it presents itself, then I'll do it. I'll take a cold shower sometimes. I'll go out in the snow and go on a cold hike. If I'm at places, so it's kind of a convenience thing. Whenever it's available, then I'll do it.
Convenience thing. Well, that's interesting, because that doesn't sound at all convenient. It sounds perfectly inconvenient. It sounds like the least convenient thing ever. But I know what you're saying. But do you find yourself trying to talk yourself out of it?
I do. It works better if I'm with someone else, because then I can kind of like, I can muster up the courage to do it. It's a lot harder when I'm just like in my shower by myself and I'm like, should I turn the cold on or just keep it nice and warm? That's actually a lot more difficult for me.
So what do you tell yourself that has you do it? Because this is really important. This is cool. This is like really interesting stuff for the audience. Is like our self-talk governs our lives. So what is it that you say to yourself to have you go, yes, let's turn this shower on it's already cold in the house. Put it on as cold as it gets, go.
I just tell myself that, it's only going to hurt for a few minutes and I'll feel better afterwards and I'll feel good about it. And so, there's no time like the present. Let's just get this thing done.
Roger that. All right, let's talk about your treatment modalities, right? The stuff that you're up to. So and correct me if I get any of this wrong, but there's like 4 things, right? Platelet-rich plasma treatment, PRP, stem cell treatment, vaginal lasers, and gains wave therapy.
Yes, those are some of the things I do. Those are some of the big
things.
Some
of the things.
Yeah. So PRP is platelet-rich plasma, and that's been around for a long time. A lot of people have been doing PRP. It's basically taking some blood from you, centrifuging it, spinning it, getting the platelets isolated into like a layer of serum, and we just inject those into different parts of the body. So people use it for musculoskeletal pain, knee pain. I use it again for skin, for hair restoration, and then for sexual optimization. But basically, we're just injecting your own platelets back into you in a concentrated way. And the reason for that is because the platelets have all these growth factors within them. And the growth factors, when they get into your tissue, they get released and they trigger a bunch of sort of healing responses in your body. Wow. So it makes sense. Like if you think about it, when you cut your arm, it's the platelets that come to the scene first to cause the blood to clot, but they also release blood, these growth factors to tell the body to heal that wound. Like we need some more blood vessels in here. We need to repair all these nerves. We need to, get some more collagen in the skin. So you can use that same idea to help promote tissue repair and regeneration in other parts of the body, just by injecting people with their own platelets.
Wow. Okay. Teach us about Okay, so dumb this down, right? Stem cell treatment for dummies. What is it?
Stem cells for dummies. So stem cells are all over your body. They're the cells in every single organ and tissue that are responsible for the upkeep of that organ or tissue. So they're responsible, for healing it if it's injured or if there's a disease process. These are the cells that can replicate and make more of themselves, and they can also do what's called differentiate, which means they can turn into other types of cells. So that's what a stem cell is, and you have them everywhere. You have them in your heart and your brain, your muscles, your skin. They're everywhere. As you get older, you don't have as many stem cells, and the ones that you have are not as active. They don't work as well. They kind of get like tired out. And so they're not sending out the same signals to the cells around them to regenerate tissue and repair things, which is again why if I cut my arm, it takes me 2 weeks to heal versus my 11-year-old son. I think he's healed in like 24 hours. Like, it's amazing. That's stem cells. Like, he's got young stem cells. I have older person stem cells. And that gets worse and worse as we get older. So the idea behind stem cell therapy is essentially taking stem cells from a part of your body, like your bone marrow or your fat, where they're just kind of hanging out and not being used really, and moving them to somewhere else and those stem cells will then stimulate the cells around them to become more active. So in the skin, for instance, maybe you use stem cells and you inject them into the skin, and all of a sudden it's telling your skin cells to make more collagen and to make more hyaluronic acid, elastin, the parts of the skin that you tend to make less of as you get old. And so that can make your skin look better, help with wrinkles, things like that. So that's how we use stem cells. It's essentially to trigger an increase in production of by other cells in the body.
So when people come in for either of those first, so the PRP, the platelet-rich plasma treatment, or stem cell, is it ongoing? Is it one visit? Do they have to be in? Is it inpatient? Is it all outpatient? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, it's outpatient. It's usually a couple of hours. PRP we can do in an hour. Spin it, inject it back, and send you on your way. Stem cells, if you're using the patient stem cells, you're going to be there for maybe 2 or 3 hours because we have to get the stem cells out first, and then we'll inject them back in. And usually at my office up in Park City at Doceri Clinics, we put patients to sleep for that, to make it really comfortable. Not everyone does that, but we have an anesthesiologist and just have you go to sleep. And that's the way to do it, I think, but you don't have to. But yeah, so you're there for a couple of hours. But it's all outpatient. It's all same day. In fact, the FDA requires that any stem cell procedures that are done in the United States have to be same day procedures. I can't take your cells out and send them to a lab and grow them in petri dishes and expand them and then put them back in your body at all that day or a different day. You can only take the cells out and put them right back in. That's one of the rules.
Why?
Because the FDA considers that essentially that you're making a drug. If I were to take your cells out and expand them in a lab, that now I've created a drug, even though they're just your cells. That's sort of one of the rules that they have. And since they have to regulate all drugs, then you can't do that without going through years of clinical trials. So we always keep our procedures just same, one patient, cells in and out, same day.
Well, would there be value though to taking them, putting them in petri, growing them? Yes.
Yeah, and they do that in other countries. So that's why people tend to leave the US sometimes for certain types of stem cell procedures. For things like people who are treating systemic diseases, treating Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease or MS or some of these things where they have a disease and they're going to need multiple treatments, then they tend to go outside of the US because we're not able to do that, repeated dosing of your own cells here in the US like that.
Well, okay, good. So let's talk about what are the applications. So vaginal lasers and GAINSWave therapy. Now, this is stuff where I've never said those words, okay, on an interview, right? And so this is really outside the typical rubric, right, of dialogue for a Tough Talks conversation.
Okay.
All right, for me. So if I look like I'm getting a little bit stammery, that's why.
Okay.
Well, it's conversation though, that is awkward for people, but it shouldn't be. One of my next follow-up questions is, what do we need to do about that? Like, how come we don't talk more normally? Like, when I watch your podcast, of course you're just speaking. You're using language that if I said it out loud at like a game, at a sports bar, if I just said vagina or vaginal lubrication or these things, they'd be like, dude, what are you saying right now? As opposed to if I say stub my toe, or I come
Right.
out, there's, so we'll talk about that in a second, but talk to us about your vaginal laser treatment and GainsWave, which I looked up for a minute. I don't fully understand what that is and why they spell it that way, but we'll get to those.
Okay. So there's two different things. These are all things that we can do to kind of create some kind of micro trauma or stress. This is in the sexual organs, for instance, that is going to have your body then think it needs to repair something, and then it triggers a healing response. So whether we're using stem cells or PRP, whether we're using lasers, whether you're using GainsWave as like a shockwave therapy, which I'll talk about in a second, but all of these things, they work by creating a micro trauma or small trauma. And then the body sees it and is like, oh, we got to fix that. We got to fix that. And then your body comes in and starts healing, and that ends up repairing or regenerating that tissue. So that's the idea behind all of this. Vaginal lasers, there's all different ones out there, but essentially lasers and radio frequency devices, we use those for people who are, we're trying to help with like stress urinary incontinence, for instance, when you cough or sneeze or run and you kind of have some urinary leakage, which is super common. These kind of things can help with that, as well as just, lack of sexual responsiveness and lack of lubrication and, sensitivity problems and things like that. So we can use the lasers and radio frequency to help, again, kind of almost like wake up those tissues a little bit and to help with the structure and such. And they, there's varying ones, but they use heat or light as their means of creating that micro trauma. And then we also have the technologies like GainsWave, which is it's low intensity shockwave therapy is the longer name for that. GainsWave is just a brand name, but what shockwave therapy is it's basically just using high intensity sound waves that come out of like a handheld device, and those sound waves go into the tissue. And this works everywhere. It works on your penis, it works on your shoulder, like it works in all different parts of your body. Those sound waves go into the tissue, essentially tells your body we have a small injury. Your body then essentially increases blood vessel formation and blood flow to the area. So can you repair that area, and you get stem cell recruitment, you get nitric oxide, which helps with blood flow. So essentially it creates a situation where your body repairs it. And so we use that, the shockwave therapy or the GainsWave, a lot in men. It's pretty new over the last 3 or 4 years to actually help reverse erectile dysfunction in men. And it's pretty amazing.
It sounds horrible because right? The terminology, shockwaves on my penis.
Well, we use numbing cream because it does hurt a little bit if you don't, but we use numbing cream and it's actually totally comfortable when we do that.
Okay. I know it's a brand for shockwave therapy, but GainsWave, they spell it capital GAINS, capital W, and then lowercase a. Is there some reason for that?
Dr. Gaines, the guy who was behind it, is GAINS, okay. And he helped found that company and then split off, but that's probably why it's spelled like that. It
sounds like all of those 4 treatments that you just described involve some kind of and again, please correct me every step of the way here if I'm wrong, but it sounds like we're fooling the body into thinking something that isn't completely accurate, but is very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like fooling the body. And that's exactly right. You're basically trying to get the cells that haven't been very active to become more active, whether that's creating blood vessels and blood flow or increasing collagen or other structures. It's to try to help your body along when it's gotten a little bit lazy.
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. To help your body move along when it's gotten a little bit lazy. That's cool. So why is some of this subject matter difficult for us, not you, but us, the rest of us, to talk about?
I don't know, but it definitely is. It's very interesting. After the talk that I did that you saw, the Mind Valley talk at AFest, so that was put up on YouTube and it's gotten a lot of views, and there are thousands of comments. And occasionally I'll go and read the comments just to kind of see what's going on. And this is a talk about sexual health. Like, it was literally about blood flow and hormones, and it was very much about sexual health. But the comments I got, it's everything from, and most of them were directed at me, but it's things like, you're a slut, you're a nymphomaniac, you're a prude, you're
God.
All this name calling. And I was just, I was thinking afterwards.
Just to clarify real quick, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Just to clarify, I want to make sure, because I'm very protective of AFest, and I know this isn't how you said it, but somebody who doesn't know what AFest is might not hear that correctly. Those comments absolutely were not coming from AFesters.
Right? Oh, no. This is people, other people out in the world.
Just people in the world who don't know what the hell. Right.
who watched the talk. They said these things.
That's okay.
But I was thinking afterwards, after I was like, who are these people? If I given a talk about, cardiovascular health or brain health or joint health, no one would have come after me like that, right? Like it was because it was about sex. And so there's something very powerful, I think, about talking about sex, like good or bad, people have a reaction to it. And all the words that, all the words that go with it, the vagina and the penis and all these things, people have this like gut, like reaction to it. And it either makes them happy or it makes them angry or it makes them scared. So it's fascinating, I think.
Yeah. So I was watching your podcast recently with Drew Pruitt, who's one of my favorite podcasters, by the way.
Yeah.
He's one of the few that are on my list that I listen to in the mornings. And he was asking some really good questions. He also made a really good point that it's like we have one class in sex ed in high school, and it's all about just really, if people are getting honest about it, it's just a fear. It's a class to make kids afraid of getting pregnant.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I don't have kids, so I'm not going to have the conversations, right? But for the rest of us that do, especially young kids, how do you normalize the dialogue, and when do you start that? Like for example, give me some advice first of all here, because this is the first Tough Talks episode, and like however many there are, where we're even talking about sex at all. Right? And check this out. I'm seriously asking you for some coaching right now, Amy.
Okay.
Just this past week, one of the people who follows the podcast is so sweet. They posted an Instagram picture of their two very young kids, very young. I mean, like single digit age. One was in a high chair, for goodness sake. And they're at morning time at breakfast, they're eating and watching my latest episode of Tough Talks with their dad, which I thought, wow. I drop a lot. I have bad language. And after watching that, I thought I better clean it up. Now, should I put a disclaimer on this episode to let people know? I cannot wait to hear your answer, so I can shut up. But I put a disclaimer in the intro to this that, hey, by the way, just a little heads up in case your kids listen, there's a lot of sexual talk here.
I think so. I've had this question. I've asked myself this question sometimes when I've given talks in places where there were potentially kids in the audience, beforehand. And what I have said is that I will be talking about some of the medical aspects of sex. I will be using the correct terminology to describe body parts. And we'll be talking about sex in sort of a medical way. And if that is something that you're not comfortable with, then, you can have your kids leave. Personally, my kids, which are now 11 and 12 and 12, as soon as they were young enough to ask me questions, I felt like it was appropriate to give them the right answers. And everyone is different, but that was, to me, when my kids started asking me, well, how does this work? And why, how do you have babies? And what are the logistics of that? I remember very distinctly the conversation and I just laid it out. Like, I didn't go into horrible detail, but I went and laid it out about the body parts and how they work and how they go together and all this. And it wasn't that big of a deal. I think it's a big deal when you make it a big deal. And I think it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Right. So I can imagine a lot of men that, anyone coming to you with hope, but also with shame. Does that happen? And what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that's not a part of your experience that you want or would ever add. Oh, let me go into this field. Let me shift from ER to regenerative because I want to work with people on their sexual dysfunction shame. No, but it's right, but it's there, right? So how do you deal with it? Because that is totally psychological.
It's one of the things that I found kind of drew me to this field is that I think a lot of people have a hard time talking about it and being comfortable having those conversations. And I realized that I wasn't one of those people, even though I was raised very religious and we didn't talk about sex at all when I was growing up. It was very off topic. But somehow later on, it became something that I was comfortable talking about. But yeah, people are very often, they do feel shame or guilt or something that they don't feel, they're not comfortable. I think that actually doing podcasts like this, doing media things is really good because a lot of my patients have already watched me on other platforms and they know that I'm going to be completely comfortable, addressing whatever their concerns are, and that it's a, you know, it's a safe place to talk about those things, and that there's nothing that they can't say to me. And I think that part of that's because they've heard me talk about these things out in public, and they're like, okay, you know, she'll be okay with this.
Yeah. Well, I have zero, I mean, I have zero difficulty believing that, because that's one of the things, like I said, my first ever experience with you ever was when you're on a stage, and that is number one human fear is public speaking. Did you know that? That people are more afraid of doing that which you crush than they are of dying.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you're just up there laughing for us, inviting us up into that high vibrational state where all of life gets easier. And so I imagine that it is very healing on every conceivable level when people come to you. So thank you for that. Thank you for the way that you show up. You demonstrate, we're going full circle here, two of my favorite things: clarity and humor, like wisdom and humor, right? Deep and simple, and lightness of being. That's a good way of putting it right there. Yeah. You bring healing, right? Vitality, youthfulness, and humor and lightness of being to the world. So you kick ass for that.
Thank you.
And thank you. And thank you for blessing us here in Tough Talks with your presence and your wisdom and your humor. So the people that want to follow you, you have a phenomenal website, which is dramykillen.com, and it's dramykillen, KILLEN.com. And I already mentioned your amazing Instagram account, which you're super active in and informative and funny, is Dr. Dr. Period Amy B. What does the B stand for? Killen.
My middle name, which is Benet, which I don't think I've ever said before out loud, but yeah, that's my middle name. Also, my pre-married name was Baldwin, so it's for either one of those.
Oh, cool. Amy B. Killen, Dr. Amy B. Killen. And you do a little, that's where you're really active, right? Is Instagram. You do a little bit of you're on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook, but you're way more active on.
And I have YouTube videos as well.
Oh, that's important. Let's do that. Awesome. Let's make sure we get the YouTube. That's right. You put a lot of YouTube videos. Anything else I missed there?
No, those are the main ones. I don't do too much Facebook. I did, and then I kind of stopped. I don't know why.
But okay, yeah, we'll add the YouTube. We'll put all that stuff in the notes. Amy, you rock. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be well. So Amy, right before we hung up, there was one more question I did want to ask that I totally forgot to ask you, which is like just one takeaway, like one thing, like if you could just share one thing, or if there's just something that you really wish these days that people knew about that would be useful to them from your area of expertise, what would that be?
I would like people to know that there are actually a lot more options available, especially when it comes to sexual dysfunction than they think that there are. I think a lot of people think that there's really nothing out there for them and that there's not a lot of hope, both men and women. And there's so many new things that have come out and are coming out every day that we have access to that there really is a lot of hope. And you shouldn't be content to be unhappy and unsatisfied sexually. There are other options.
That was very effective because look, you're already getting a new patient.
Sorry, yeah, my phone and my computer just rang, and I don't know how to turn it off.
Well, somebody who's listening is like, okay, well, let's go.
I apologize. I usually have that turned off. I'm not sure how it broke through.
That's the best damn thing that could have happened. The timing. No, seriously, if there's any usefulness in being serious, no, that's really helpful. That's really helpful because it's hopeful. So thank you for that.
It's kind of funny, the joke I made in the beginning wasn't even a joke. It was just a reference, because her name is so cool, Killen, right? Amy B. Killen, Amy B. Killing it. It's funny. It's like her work is the opposite of that. She ain't killing it. Well, she's killing it at helping people be youthful and healthy, right? And happy. So that's just spectacular. I've been looking forward to having her on the show since the show started. I can't remember. I think that Tough Talks podcast started maybe right around the same time as that Sardinia A-Fest event at which I met her. So that's exactly how long I've been looking forward to having her. I hope you enjoyed her as much as I did. And until next time, create miracles.